All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. On this, what is kind of a rainy Wednesday in our area. How are things in Delaware? Have they cleared up a little bit, Gunner?
Partially sunny, overcast. Rain stopped. It was drizzling earlier.
A little cooler today.
A little cooler, which is fine.
Yeah.
But the rain stopped at least.
That's good. That's good. Go ahead. Keep shoveling in whatever you're eating. That's all. There you go. All right.
Okay? There we go.
Okay. Thank you. I don't want you to no choking or anything like that. All right. Let's go back to the Sixers here for a second. And again, Daryl Morey was on 97.5 The Fanatic with Anthony Gargano. So a couple of the highlights here. He said that he did confirm that he wants out. Just we all knew that, but said he won't move on from him unless it benefits the team. Need either a player to keep them in the running in the East or draft picks that they can turn into a player. Now, one of the things that he said was, and I guess he sort of has to say this, so I do understand it a little bit, but he really referenced and made it sound like, hey, we were this close. We lost to a really good team in the Celtics in the East, and it was in a game 7. And it's like, we've all heard this and seen this a million times. Like, nobody's buying it. Nobody's buying it.
No, the bottom line is you lost. You didn't finish it. You were right there on the cusp of finishing them off, and you didn't. You let them off the hook. You went home with egg on your faces. So you weren't right there, because if you were right there, you'd have been in the conference finals. You didn't get to the conference finals. So you have to go back and redo the blueprint. And obviously right now, the big part of that redrawing the blueprint with a new head coach is, what do you do with James Harden? Now, if what we're hearing from Mike Sealski is true about how the Eagles can get out of this without egg on their faces, I didn't get to present this to Mike, is if the Clippers are the primary potential trade candidate, there's really only 2 players on the Clippers roster I want. There's Paul George or Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, no shot.
If I'm the Clippers, and if what Bill Plansky's article says is true, they got to make a run now. Well, you need George and Kawhi, 2 players, by the way, who have injury histories. You need both
injury histories.
Yeah, to get to the finish line. You're not giving up one of them to get James Harden, because to me, you're right back at square one. You're a decent team that's going to get to the playoffs, but you're going to crumble in the biggest moments. You need to add a James Harden to them to make all great NBA teams have at least 3 players. Okay. Outside of that, there's nobody else on the Clippers that I'm excited about trading James Harden for, if you really think about it. So why am I trading James Harden to the Clippers if I'm not getting that caliber of a player back?
Well, yeah, it's a great question. And I think that this is where you start to fall into are you doing what's best for the player who's leaving? Or are you doing what's best for the team? And to me, I could care less where James Harden gets shipped to. Give me the best return. I'm not trying to do him any kind of favors, but I think Morey will try and get him to the place that he wants to be. And I think the way this plays out is they're not getting either Kawhi or Paul George. And frankly, I don't know that I want Paul George. He's so banged up. I don't want any parts of Paul George. Kawhi's hurt all the time too, frankly.
Yes.
But if you could get Norman Powell and Terrence Mann in picks, I'd be okay with that. I think they may be able to fit into Nick Nurse's scheme a little bit. And I think it would actually be a pretty good remedy for this. But what the problem you have is, and I know this is not why you make deals or how you make deals or the timing of when you make deals, but the fans are exhausted by this. Yeah. And for you to be sitting here and have to get through the entire summer and into the, a little bit of the fall, I think into September, and wait this out and not to mention what we talked about earlier, how unfair it is to Nick Nurse. The fans are just, you're already leaning on a Sixers fan base that's tired anyway.
Yeah.
And asking them to put up with the whole summer of this crap. I mean, honestly. But we had a pretty interesting discussion pre-show, the 3 of us, you, me, and Tone, who's our producer, regarding Joel Embiid and just kind of where you're at in this point. So let's bring Tone on now, because I want to kick this around. So one of the things, hey, Tone, what's up, bud? One of the things,
fellas?
Good, buddy. Good. Thanks for hopping on. One of the things that was also a piece of the interview, and I thought Anthony did a great job, by the way, but he also did not Anthony, Daryl Morey. One of the things that Daryl Morey said was Joel really wants to be here. He was just being practical from a business standpoint. And you know how he is. Like, basically, he might have been trolled. First of all, I don't buy for 2 seconds that was a troll job.
Nope.
Joking, trying to get fans cracked up. He wasn't doing any of that.
Nope.
I think he was doing 2 things. I think, one, he was letting you know, like, yeah, I could need a change of address at some point. He was also trying to get the Sixers to get moving. But let's dip into what we were talking about. I think we're all kind of ready to see Harden go.
Right.
But as far as Embiid goes, I'll start with you, Tone. Where do you fall? Just kind of where you're at with him in general at this point as a Sixer.
To put it plainly, I'm ready to move on. The reality is we've seen Joel Embiid in various situations under various circumstances, and time again, they've lost to the inferior team. This past season, we saw them against the Boston Celtics. Some people would say during the season, the Boston Celtics were the better team, right? But the reality is that Boston Celtics team, despite talent, they were very dysfunctional.
Yep.
And they were vulnerable. And the Philadelphia 76ers, the Joel Embiid-led Philadelphia 76ers, could not take advantage of a vulnerable Boston Celtics team that pretty much was ready to lay down and die when you had them at 3-2. You gave them game 6. I watched that game from beginning to end. And I vividly remember the Philadelphia 76ers somehow, some way, just folding in the fourth quarter. Folding. Now, sure, Jason Tatum made shots at the very end, but you wasted Jason Tatum's worst game of the series. You wasted it. That was his worst game, his worst shooting night of the series, and you wasted it. You allowed him to make key shots down the stretch, which put that team in position to win game 6, and they went on to smack you in game 7. Right. So you lost to the Celtics. Then the year prior to that, I believe they lost to who was
Atlanta?
That? Atlanta. You lost to Atlanta. I went to game 5.
Or what? That was 2 years ago.
No, sorry, that was 2 years ago.
2 prior.
Last year.
Still Ben Simmons. Yeah.
Yes. Then 1 year you lose to the Atlanta Hawks. Right. Another team who is, in my opinion, they were inferior. They were completely inferior.
Yep.
You allowed that team to come in, crush you in game 5. I remember that game vividly. The Sixers had a 30-point lead at one point. They blew it. I don't know how they did it, but
it was the Heat the year before.
Yep. Yes, they lost to the Heat the year before. Correct. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. And then you lost to the Heat, another team that was inferior talent-wise, but they punked you.
Yep.
They punked you. That's the honest reality. Joel Embiid had injury after injury after injury through playoff run after playoff run after playoff run. And I'll be quite honest with you guys. I don't believe he has it. I don't think he has the championship it factor, right? He's talented. We're not here to debate his talent. We're not here to debate the validity of his MVP award. We understand that when it comes to talent, when it comes to putting the ball on the court and putting the ball on the hoop, he's him. We understand that. But the reality is Joel Embiid is not a winning player. He cannot get out of the second round. He is not the leader you want. We've seen too many moments. Every time things go bad at the end of the season, you see him in a press conference or interview saying, well, I can't do it by myself. Just a week ago, well, not a week ago, I'm sorry, when he won the MVP, we saw him saying, I couldn't have got this award without these guys. He got his MVP. Soon as things go south, me and James can't do everything by ourselves, So it's like, which is it? Which is it, Joel Embiid? So I've come to the conclusion that this isn't about talent anymore. This is about a desire. This is about a commitment to your teammates. This is about having that it factor. And he just doesn't have that it factor. So if you ask me, you move on from James Harden, you move on from Joel Embiid whenever you can. Derek, I see what you're saying about giving him an additional year to see how it looks under Nick Nurse. I think I'm leaning towards that.
That's where I'm at.
But my emotion is ready to move on from him now because his value will never be higher. And who's to say he won't have another injury? During this coming season. He's coming off the MVP award. His value would be higher.
Yeah, I'll reiterate what I said to Mike Sielski. And I've seen this happen in multitudes of sports. Sometimes your greatest players are great because of the people around them. Yeah. There are some great athletes that cannot handle the day in and day out pressure of being the sole focal point. Michael Jordan could handle that. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was great because look at the talent around him. You couldn't double up Kareem because you had so many other options, and because he was so dominant at what he does, all he had to do was what he did. I think Joel Embiid is that kind of player. Look at what happens in the playoffs, especially with Boston. Once they identify, if we double Joel Embiid, we can cut the head off the dragon. because they don't respect the other players around them. If James Harden beats us, okay, we don't think the other players can beat us. But if we double down on Joel, and look how frustrated he got as the series wore on, because they will double down on him, slapping his hands, taking the ball away from him.
Right.
It messed with his mental psyche. But if you put a better collection of players around him and they can't double down on him, I think Joel could just basically abuse anybody trying to defend him.
Yeah, I mean, that's why when Doc Rivers left, one of the things he said is Embiid needs an alpha. Now, I don't think any of us like to hear that. We want him to be the alpha, but it is what it is. He needs an alpha. And James Harden's not an alpha.
No.
James Harden's a worse version of Embiid when it comes to big spots.
They had one, but then they lost him.
Yeah, they had Jimmy Butler,
right.
and he didn't get along with Ben Simmons, and he didn't get along with Brett Brown, two people who aren't here
I would
anyway.
say Jimmy Butler would have made Joel Embiid a much better.
Agreed.
I completely agree.
Player.
Agreed.
No,
But
no debate there. No debate.
Mentally tough player.
I agree with you. And they missed that badly. And they thought PJ Tucker's not good enough. That's the problem.
No,
He is a guy who's a dog and has made a great career out of just being, worker and scrapper and all. You love that. But you have to be better than, frankly, and no disrespect to PJ Tucker. So here's where I'm at with Embiid. Tone, I get what you're saying. And I'm leaning that. I'm like this. Here I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. I got to try it one more year at least and see what it looks like with Nurse. Before, but I'm telling you, man, if you're asking me right now, will Joel Embiid win a championship as a Sixer? My answer would be no.
I'm not seeing it.
You're right. If you press me on the spot, I'm saying no. And I hate that I feel that way, but I feel that way.
Now, let me say this to you guys, right? I know we've gotten into some casual debates about whether Tyrese Maxey is capable of taking the reins, right?
Right.
And I'm with Mike Sealski on this. You will never, ever see, and this goes into keeping Joel Embiid another year, because I want to see what a Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid combo looks like for an entire season. I need to see that because I refuse to believe that Tyrese Maxey is what he is. Let's be totally frank about Tyrese Maxey's development. He's been developing tremendously over the past 3 years. He's entering year 4. His rookie year, he averaged 8 points coming off the bench. Okay, young guy coming into his own, had to figure it out, right? Year 2, averaging 17.5 points. I believe that was his first year starting, I believe. But he still was coming off the bench time and time again. But he played 75 games, started in 74. So he was a primary starter in 2021, 2022. Then the 2022 season comes. He averages 20 points a game. He plays 60 games. Started in 41. He had a little bit of an injury bug earlier in the year, but he came off the bench time, here and there just to get back from that injury. But this is where it really stands out to me when it comes to Tyrese Maxey. Rookie season, again, played in 12 playoff games, came off the bench, only averaged 6 points a game, young guy. But his sophomore season, 2021 to 2022, that playoff run where they lost to the Heat, he averaged 20 points in the playoffs through 12 games, averaging 40 minutes a game. And then this past playoff run, he averaged 20 points again, averaged about 38 minutes per game. And his efficiency has only gone up as a player. So my point is, if he's doing this, playing next to James Harden for the past 1.5 seasons, if he's doing this next to James Harden in the current situation, can you imagine if you actually give him the keys? If you actually say, listen, we're leaning on you this year. You are our number 2 behind Joel Embiid. We're giving you the keys to be the guy. I gave you guys the comparison of we've seen Jokic and Jamal Murray develop into what they are. They weren't always this. Jamal Murray was a slow burner. He actually just became that playoff against the bubble. That's when we finally started.
That's when he blew up.
That was when we respected Jamal Murray. Then he got hurt, right?
Yep.
I see a similar trajectory with Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid if they actually lean into it. Tyrese Maxey can score on all 3 levels. He can score on the fast break. He's become one of the best 3-point shooting guards in the league, one of the most efficient, right? He can score with either hand, has one of the best layup packages for one of these young guys in the league. Sure, he can probably develop that point guard mentality of orchestrating the plays, but he's never been asked to do it. So if we actually give him the opportunity to do so, I'll be willing to see Joel Embiid hang out with Tyrese Maxey for another year or even maybe another 2 years.
Well, I think that's also why you keep Embiid, because you got to see what those two look like when they're paired as 1-2. And I think the big thing, I agree with you. Like, here's what Maxey has to show you this year. We know he's like Hurts in the sense that the dude just works. He is a worker.
He's a grinder. I have no problem paying Tyrese Maxey.
Right. He's a team guy and all that. What the issue you have is he's really, at least right now, a 2 and a 1's body.
Okay.
He's a combo guard. What I want to see is a little bit more point guard characteristics and traits from him, being able to feed the post, running an offense, setting a team up, getting guys in the best position. I just want to see a little bit more of that from him. Like, there's so many other things that are great here with this guy, and he just gets better and better and better.
That's opportunity. He needs opportunity.
And that's what this season could be for him.
Yeah.
If Harden's not here. One of the other things that Morey talked about was the reason they didn't extend him this year is because the cap gets goofy next year. And there's all kinds of penalties if you go over and all that, but you can do things with your own people. It also will allow them, if they're doing this thing where they're clearing all the books except for Embiid and Tucker, to get really aggressive. So I'm okay with that from a Sixer standpoint, but that's the only growth I want to see from Maxey. And I love the guy, but I want to see a little bit more point guard.
Let me ask you both this.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought this up. Say Maxey moves to the point. What if he's the same player at the point as he was at the 2? Is that good enough for you? It is satisfactory enough for you guys for him to be an integral part of this team moving forward?
It wouldn't mean I'd want to get rid of him. It would not mean that if he can't show me that. What it really tells you is you need to get him a quality size 1 who can guard the other team's wing. The Sixers used to do that with Iverson and Eric Snow. They need to sort of do that same thing if that's the case. So, but I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
I basically just wanted to throw this out there as well. This team, I believe you guys mentioned it. Next year, there's only going to be 2 people on contract. That's Joel Embiid and PG Tucker, right?
Correct.
So I say this, and you bring in a new coach and Nick Nurse, and we've seen Nick Nurse maximize the Toronto Raptors team without a Kawhi Leonard. We've seen him maximize that, have that team in the playoffs every single year. So I say this, right, and this kind of lends more so to my theory about trading Joel Embiid. I understand that if you trade Joel Embiid, you move James Harden, you're a worse team. But if you think about what you can get back for Joel Embiid and a James Harden, and then on top of that, you couple that with what Nick Nurse has been able to do with lesser talent with the Toronto Raptors, my thing is, if you can see a well-coached team under Nick Nurse that has some young quality talent led by whoever it is at the time, maybe Tyrese Maxey is there, whoever you decide to bring in, my point is, if you can have Nick Nurse maximize a roster that relatively has some quality young guys on it, and you see how far he can take that, because we've seen teams that didn't really have the star yet. They were talented all the way around the board, but they didn't have the star yet, and they were first-round exits or maybe a second-round exit, right? You find out what this team is after you make those trades, and then at that point, you plug in a star who may be available, and then that star can take you over the hump. I'm just really, really fed up with the lackluster effort in the biggest moments when it comes to the Philadelphia 76ers superstars. And the Philadelphia 76ers have become, in my opinion, they've become the Chargers of the NBA.
I think they're the Cowboys.
They're going to always, right. If you add in the drama, you might be onto something, right? They become the Cowboys of the NBA. They're talented. They're going to always give you 50 games won. They're always going to get into the playoffs. They're going to get to the second round. But after that, they're going to break your heart. Yeah. So I'm tired of, we've seen this song and dance time and time again. And I'm ready to change I'm ready to turn the page to the point where Joel Embiid's gone, James Harden is gone. I need to see something else. Get me excited about something else. I don't care if it's even guys I don't know who they are. I need to see that you're trying to shift something.
Think of how many years you went through that frustration when it was an Andy Reid coached Eagles team. They would get you. They would get you to the promised land, but they couldn't get you the brass ring. It wasn't until a guy named Doug Peterson, his understudy, came in here, it changed the whole complexion of what it felt like to be a champion in the city of Philadelphia.
Absolutely.
And I see what you're saying, Tone, in terms of giving up Joel Embiid, while he still has some value.
Really quickly, what do you guys think you can get back for Joel Embiid right now? What do you guys think you can get back?
It's a weird market. I mean, he's an MVP. He's only 30, but he's a center. Yeah. And I'm not comparing centers to running backs. I'm not saying that, but you're not going to get the same value you would get for a wing who was coming off an MVP. I don't think you will. And the other thing that teams, if they're smart, have to take into account is he going to hold up? Are you getting 5 years out of this guy?
Yeah. Yeah. Here's what I compare. I think you can get enough out of Joel Embiid right now to make the Sixers team look like the Miami Heat for the last 2 to 3 years. A bunch of 6'8", 6'9" guys that are well-oiled machine. Not a big team, but an athletic team, a tenacious team. I think if everything fell into place, you can get a nucleus to get a 7 to 9 man roster, which will complement each other very well. With the coach, that Toronto team he coached in the NBA championship wasn't a big team, but they were pit bull mentality. They were a pit bull mentality team. That's all you need. You don't need to be the biggest team on the court. You just need to be the most cohesive team at the right time.
Yeah.
And I think you can get enough back from that.
Let me add one thing to the potential trade. So I read so much of this stuff. I can't even remember where I read this one. But because Butler wants Embiid so bad, okay, let's say the Lillard thing falls apart for Miami for whatever reason. This is all hypothetical. There's a lot of thought that Butler is in Pat Riley's ear saying, get me Embiid, get me Embiid, get me Embiid. If that's the case, you could have Bam Adebayo come over here, right? Maybe along with something else. All of a sudden, you become really athletic. Like if Harden's moved and you have Maxey and you have Adebayo and a couple other pieces that you can add here and there, things change pretty quickly. And
you give me Bam, you give me Tyler Hero, you give me.
Yeah,
that's not going to happen.
But I'm just saying, it might.
Stranger things have happened.
You look
Let's put it like this. I don't think Embiid fits into Eric Spoelstra's style of play. They get up and down the court. Embiid lumbers up and down the court.
Yeah.
I don't think he fits that from the time Spoelstra has been there. Look at his teams and look at how they play. They're up and down the court on both ends of the court. They're all over the court. They're like bees buzzing. Switch, double teams. Embiid's not that kind of player.
Mm-hmm.
He's not.
Yeah.
It's a great concept. If they pulled it off, kudos to the 76ers. If they could get Adebayo here and Hero here and send him down there.
Yeah.
And give Nick Nurse this kind of, but I just don't see Miami. Now, maybe there's another team out there we're not looking at. I don't see him fitting in Miami because that's not what Spoelstra likes.
Yeah.
It's not how he plays.
Let me add one more thing with Harden.
Yeah.
I know our automatic assumption is if you trade him to the Clippers and you get those guys I mentioned, you're going to take a huge step backwards.
I don't think so.
I don't think you do.
I don't think so. I really
because
don't.
Powell knows Nurse's system. Terrence Mann's a good player. I think you're just going to be different.
I'll even try to get Bones Highland. I try to get him too.
Yeah,
he's a very sparky player. I like his ability to put the ball on the floor.
Yeah,
score off the dribble, things like that.
Yeah, so I think it looks on paper like, oh my God, you're losing Harden's 10 assists and whatever it was, almost 20 points a game. I get it; it's going to look different, but I don't think it's a death knell. I really don't, man.
Have you guys seen him go to the rim? He looks like he has center blocks in his sneakers.
I know, and it ain't getting better either.
And it's not going to
as he gets older.
Right.
I agree.
Can we agree on one thing?
Yes.
Please move Harden. Please.
Yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
I'm tired of talking about it.
I'm tired of talking about
him.
It's no question. I mean, he's going to get moved. It's just a matter of when.
When.
I just don't want it to. I don't want it to carry over into training camp.
Yeah, it's going to hijack the whole summer for the
because
season.
Nick Nurse. I believe Nick Nurse is a really good coach, like a really good coach. Again, we've seen him coach that Toronto Raptors team as far as he could because they weren't the most talented. Pascal Siakam, he's a B plus star. You know what I mean? He's good, but very limited in my humble opinion. We saw what Nick Nurse did the moment Kawhi got there, took that team to another level. Right when you plug in that star, then the following year he left, obviously, but he still had that team relevant. That Raptors team pushed that Sixers team last year, pushed them.
Yep.
And in my opinion, out-toughed them in all reality, but they still won the series. Look, you guys, I'm not going to monopolize the show. I'll go on for days and days, man.
Appreciate you hopping on, man.
Again, like I'm really I'm waist deep on the Tyrese Maxey train. I want to see Mad Max just take over. I've seen him go toe-to-toe with John Morant, be clutch. I don't know if you guys remember that game this past season. There was a game where the Sixers and the Memphis Grizzlies faced off. It was a touch and go game, but Tyrese Maxey and John Morant was going back and forth in that fourth quarter. The game ended up going into overtime, and Tyrese Maxey pretty much led the way and had clutch basket after clutch basket, and he sealed it with I think it was a steal, and laid it up at the end of the game. But Tyrese Maxey has the clutch gene. He can shoot off the dribble. He can shoot spot up. He can score on the fast break. He can finish at the rim with either hand. I've seen more highlight plays from Tyrese Maxey this season than I have from James Harden.
Yeah.
Man, I'll leave it at that, you guys.
All
I
right.
appreciate you guys
You
giving me
got
that.
it. All right,
man.
All right, buddy. All right, we'll talk to you. That is Tone, our producer. All right, let's get a timeout, Gunner. Let's set our sights back on the NFL. All right. Cowboys dysfunction. Yes. Music to my ears. So we'll talk about that. We'll get into everything else NFL, including the greatest segment, which we will, our series, which we continue here. And it is the Los Angeles / St. Louis / Los Angeles Rams. We will do that when we come back. Don't go anywhere. That is Derek Gunn. I am Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. All right. Let me tell you about Flynn Tree Services. Flynn Tree Services is an experienced, licensed, and insured Pennsylvania tree services company that will trim or remove any unwanted trees off of your property. They service southeastern Pennsylvania, South Jersey, and northern Delaware. Now, keep in mind, good time to get your trees evaluated right now so you don't have any major problems as the summer goes on. You can go to their Facebook or Instagram page for more information or a sampling of their work. Give Flynn Tree Services a call at 610-850-2848,